Good morning. I hope that you're well. I'm sure that you're just joining me here. I've just shared in the chat, in the comments, where you can find season 1 episodes from last year. You may notice that I'm missing my co-host. He had an emergency this morning or this afternoon. He's in Finland and isn't able to join me. And so I decided to go ahead on my own because there were 50 some odd people signed up. And having had experience last year in a similar situation, I decided I could do this. And so here I am on my own talking about thriving as a human. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Stephanie Barnes. I am the Chief Chaos Organizer at Entelechy, and that's a knowledge management consultancy that I have been running for 23 years this year. Although when I first started, it was called Missing Puzzle Piece Consulting. I changed the name in 2018 when I started doing more creativity work and more of the arts-based intervention stuff and culture things. So that's a bit about me. And I decided to turn this into an Ask Me Anything. I have a few little things that I can talk about here. But given that I was on my own and this is the first episode of our season 2, I thought it might be a good opportunity to turn it into an Ask Me Anything. So ask me anything. And we'll see how this goes. If I don't get any questions, right now it doesn't look like anybody's actually on, which is fine. It's just a couple of minutes after 9. If nobody comes on and asks me questions, then we'll wrap this up early, and Simo will hopefully be back next week, or I will find a different co-host to join me, guest co-host to join me. So let's see how this goes. Last season, we talked certainly about how to thrive as a human in an AI world. We will be talking about that theme again this year because that's the name of the podcast. And while things have changed in the last year, certainly, this is still an issue, how to be human in an AI world. This morning when Simo messaged me that he had this emergency, not the first thing I did, but one of the things I did was ask AI, what to do or what I should talk about. And it gave me some ideas. It actually gave me the idea for the Ask Me Anything, which I liked because I did an Ask Me Anything a while ago. And it was actually fun. The project team I was working with asked me all kinds of things about my approach and my plans and how I worked, and I had expected different questions. I wasn't actually sure what to expect, but I expected some harder questions than what they were, and we had a good time. We filled about 45 minutes or an hour, and it was nice. It wasn't recorded, so that we had established some trust and some candor. So it was fun. So and so let's see. Other than the Ask Me Anything, which we will continue to do as we move through this. One of the things that has come up increasingly, and I know we talked about this last year too, the difference between relationship versus transaction, and how everything has become very transactional and less relational, and how broken things are. And this morning while I was eating breakfast, a song came on the radio. Yes, I listened to the radio. The Pina Colada song. Some of you are probably familiar with it. And it talks about this couple that they've kind of grown apart, and the man is looking at the this is a song from the 70s, for those of you who are too young. 70s, yeah, I'm gonna say 70s, maybe early 80s, but I think late 70s. um, this couple has grown apart, and he's looking at the looking for love ads in the newspaper, and sees this one, and decides to respond, and so goes to this bar or pub, and turns out that he's meeting his current partner. um, and they realize that they don't know all these things about them, about each other. And despite having lived together for a period of time, or been together for a period of time, um, and it struck me like this is what the world has come to, or the world that we're living in still is this very transactional. We go to the coffee shop and buy a coffee, but we don't really talk to the people making it for us, or the people in line. Sometimes you do, um, but you stand in line at the grocery store, don't really talk to people. Don't have any kind of relationship with our colleagues and things. And this song just made me think of how transactional everything has become in our relationships, in our world. Partly because of the pandemic, partly because of AI. People are now talking to AI like it's a human being, not unlike what I did this morning when Simo let me know that he couldn't make it. I asked the AI. I also, before that, to be honest, reached out to a few people to see if they were able to co-host with me, and they weren't available on short notice, which is understandable. There are certainly times that I wouldn't be available either. So yeah. But people are having relationships with AI. So yeah, it's a scary, scary thing. And I think we've forgotten our humanity, which is what Radical KM is about, is trying to bring some of that back, make the space for ourselves, and for each other, and for our teams, and our groups in our workplaces. And those of you that have just joined, thank you. And they have turned this into an Ask Me Anything. So ask me anything. Let me see if I can add this. And I think I need to post that on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn let me see here. LinkedIn is not cooperating, but I have turned this into an Ask Me Anything because Simo isn't available. So ask me anything. And I remember I have to maybe find a different platform, because LinkedIn doesn't play well with StreamYard for some reason. But yeah, anyway, back to what I was saying. What was I saying? Just the nature of transactional versus relational. And I know that we talked about, Simo and I talked about that last week. Or not last week, last year. Time flies when you're having fun, or even when you're not. So I don't know. I think this is, I maybe wrap this up soon. The other thing that came into my head this morning while I was listening to the radio, they were talking about yearbooks and high schools, and things that people had done or not done in high school. And I thought, again, back to this relational versus transactional, and how we make decisions, and this fear of missing out. I think that there's a lot of that driving the AI stuff that we're seeing happen, is this fear of missing out. This we believe the hype that everybody's doing it. Nobody's doing it because it's new. They're trying, and in a lot of cases, if I remember the stats from KM World last year, something like 90 or 95% of AI initiatives fail. That's probably because the databases, the knowledge bases that they're reading aren't well governed and kept up to date and maintained. And so that's garbage in, garbage out. But I think about all the hype of AI, and it's a useful tool. My post this past week was about that, but it's a tool. So I think there's a lot of fear of missing out and making decisions because of peer pressure. And back to my thing about the high schools, there's a lot of that, I think, in high school. I know certainly that was my experience. There's this big pressure to choose what you wanted to do with the rest of your life at 14 or 15 or 16 or 17. And the world is changing. How can you decide? The job I'm doing didn't exist in 1984 or 81 when I decided I was going to be an accountant, and I'm not an accountant. But there was so much pressure to do that, and I think it's escalated now, or increased exponentially now, because of AI and because of social media. And not that those things are bad, but I wish that we would take a step back and say, what are we doing here, instead of reacting all the time. And that's really what Radical KM is about. That's what Simo and I talk about in this podcast, is taking a step back and reflecting and thinking about things and saying, what is this doing? Why is it doing it? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? How do we want to incorporate that into what we're doing? Certainly look around. What are the possibilities? Talk to people, research, think about things rather than just constantly reacting. Constantly reacting is exhausting. And so it's time to take a break and think and reflect. It's so important to let go of this fear of missing out. It will still be there, and you'll have the opportunity to learn from what others who haven't been able to take the step back, the mistakes that they have made, and learn from that and move forward. So if I'm seeing this right, and I'm not sure that I am, to be honest, but it doesn't look like anybody's going to ask me any questions, which is fine. But I'm going to wrap this up, and we will be back. Simo and I will hopefully be back next week. Someone says, Stephanie, thanks for sharing. Oh, here, I can make this. Stephanie, thanks for sharing. What are the positive side of AI you see that we should leverage in the sphere of knowledge management? And a second question, how should we be more proactive about ahead of the time to be prepared for? So thank you. Somebody asked me a question. Yay. The positive side of AI, I think it gives us more possibilities. I use it like an intern. So it goes out and does research for me. Now I double check it, especially I ask it to give me references and things that I can go and check. And sometimes it makes things up, and sometimes it really does. But it saves me that searching. I think it's useful for summarizing things, and these are all pretty routine things people are using it for now. I think the agentic AI stuff is interesting. I'm very hesitant about it from a business process perspective and a risk prospect and a legal litigation issues and things like that. But I think that there's there's some possibility there too. But I think it's important to keep humans in the loop, that this has the potential to run amok very quickly and at scale. I said bad answers or wrong answers at scale last week to someone. This is what we need to be. There are benefits to it, especially if we are properly governing our knowledge bases. But there's also downsides. So making sure that the repositories that are being accessed are well maintained and governed is key. I think it's a way to access knowledge. I think there's some interesting tools out there trying to capture tacit knowledge or surface it a little bit more easily than we've been able to do in the past, which I think is interesting. I'm curious about understanding some more of that. Although I don't think that you can truly capture everything. But yeah, I think there's some possibilities of capturing more. The second question, how should we be more proactive about ahead of time to be prepared for? Not being afraid to take the step back and look at things and consider, the pros and cons, and not just rush into things because that's all the hype on LinkedIn or TikTok or wherever, whatever social media platform. I don't want to get into politics, but I did read the first part of an article this morning about the Canadian government and their reaction to some of the trade stuff that's going on with our largest trading partner, and how the Canadian team has stepped back and looked at things instead of just reacting. And I think that's what we need to do in business too, in our organization, not just business, but in our organizations, whatever kind of organization you're in, is step back, stop reacting. Reacting is going to end up down some kind of a rat hole, and you're going to end up in trouble. So take a step back and pause and take a breath, and give it some space, and then make a calm, informed decision rather than just a reaction. So thank you for asking that. Am I missing a question? I just see one. So thank you for LinkedIn user. I can't see your name on StreamYard. So thank you for that. Anyone else would like to ask me a question? How do we keep leaders grounded and avoid the form of FOMO about AI? That's tough. I wish that it was easier. Leaders have a lot of pressure on them from external sources, from internal sources. And I think working with our leaders to encourage them to take a breath, to help them step back. Our leaders, especially at the executive level, should be taking a step back and looking at the strategy of it all, understanding the interconnectedness of things, and looking at the risk. To be honest, that's what they're paid for. So at least that's what I thought they were paid for. So is the strategy, is that risk, is understanding and being that calm second thought. So I think we need to put some things in place to help encourage that, because I think they're human the way the rest of us are, and get caught up in the hype too. Partly the pressure from shareholders or CEOs or board of directors, putting pressure on things for short term, and don't look at the longer term. So I think anything we can do to help them create that space and to take that pause and look at all of the things that I just said, the risks and the strategy and the interconnectedness of things. This comes back to issues around the transaction versus relationship stuff. We get so focused on the transaction, we forget how it's connected to everything else. And it's not just this one single piece, it's a whole bunch of pieces that we need to look at, and we've lost sight of that. So I think anything we can do to, like I say, to encourage leaders to take a pause and really understand the strategy and the interconnectedness and the bigger picture is a good thing. Enroll them in a Radical KM workshop. Okay. Oh, I got something from Lee. Thank you, Lee. Can you speak to the difference between knowledge versus information? This seems to be at the crux of what I can and can't. Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Lee. This was came up in my post last week. And knowledge, and this has been the case for as long as I've worked in knowledge management, but it's become even bigger with AI. Knowledge is big. Knowledge is tacit. That's about context. It's about learning. It's about experience. It's not just what's written down. There's been a big push over the years, for as long as I've been working in knowledge management, honestly, that the only knowledge is what's written down, and the rest of it doesn't count, or nobody's interested in that that tacit stuff, that stuff that's not captured, and they're only interested in the tacit, in how to capture it, which just isn't possible. Some things have to be experienced. So what gets put into repositories and documented is information, and part of the discussion last week on my post was about that's not even information, that it's data, and I would support that view as well. But it's because it's lacking the context, it's lacking the understanding of the judgment that went into that, the experiences that went into making that decision or having that happen. It's just a piece of information, a piece of data. It's one thing that happened, and it's just the core of what happened. I might have pen. So I'm going to drop the pen. The pen dropped. That's information. Why did the pen drop? Well, there's gravity. There's the fact that I let go of it. There's the fact that I'm showing, doing this talk and wanted to make something real, and give an example off the top of my head, spur of the moment, about the difference between knowledge and information and data. Knowledge understands the gravity, understands that it fell because I let go of it, and because of gravity, and all of the other contextual things. Information and data says, oh, it dropped. It's on the desk now. It's not in Stephanie's hand. And so AI is focused on the data, on the information, on the stuff that's in the repositories, which is a small part of what knowledge actually is. And it's useful. Having those large quantities of data is useful, although I'm a bit concerned about the electricity and the resources being used for that, but that's a different discussion. But AI is just looking at what's been documented, and we can document a lot, but there's things that we don't think about, that we just do automatically. That you don't think about why you do them until you probably have to teach somebody or explain it to somebody. Like, how many of us hadn't thought about how to tie shoes until we had a child or a niece or nephew, somebody that didn't know how to tie shoes, and we have to explain to them how to tie shoes or ride a bike or swim. These are things that we do automatically and we don't think about, but until you have to teach someone, until you have to explain it. And this is the thing with Radical KM. It's people look at it and go, oh, that doesn't make sense, so I'm not doing that. And then they have the experience and go, oh, I get it now. And so back to Lee's question about knowledge versus information, knowledge is the whole, there's a wisdom of this, it's over top of that, but it's much more of the context and the fuzzy stuff around the core of information and data. And so AI can only deal with that core, not the fuzzy stuff around it. I hope that I have made somewhat of a coherent answer to that, Lee. But this is the problem, though, that in our organizations, what is often called knowledge management is really information management, because it's only concerned with the repositories, with the articles, with the data, with the metadata tags, with the information architecture, and now it's all about putting those artifacts in some kind of a format so that AI can read it and knows what to do with it and make sense of it. Well, I'm not sure I want to use that word, but puts it in a form that's usable. And we're missing out. We're missing out on all the fuzzy stuff, all the soft stuff, all the soft stuff that's really actually the hard stuff. And it's the stuff that we tend to shy away from, like the relationships, and those interactions, those honest interactions with people, and our colleagues, which are hard. I know that they're hard, but the hard things are very worthwhile, and so doing the hard part of knowledge management, paying attention to the tacit, paying attention to the relationships, that's the hard part, but very worthwhile. When you have a team that functions well together, collaborates, and shares knowledge well, when you have an organization that shares knowledge well, the sky's the limit. When you have an organization that hoards knowledge, doesn't write things down, doesn't share things, doesn't collaborate, good luck to you, because you're just circling the drain, quite honestly. Yes, missing context and nuance. Exactly. All those things that it doesn't matter, but it does matter. It does matter. And we have dismissed it, unfortunately, as soft skills, right? Like it's some insult. If you can't communicate effectively, that's the hardest thing you'll ever learn, is how to communicate effectively, and how to be honest and open and forthright and vulnerable. Hardest thing you will ever do, be vulnerable. And yet it gets called a soft skill. Anyway, it's been a half an hour. I appreciate everyone's questions and participation. And hopefully Simo's back with me next week, and we will get this going then. You won't have me doing a monologue. I do appreciate everyone that submitted a question. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone that's been here. I appreciate anyone that's watching the recording afterwards. I will put a link to last year's series in the comments. They are on LinkedIn. They're a bit harder to find on LinkedIn, but I have a podcast list set up with them on YouTube. So I'll put that in the comments if you want to go back and listen to any of the ones from last year. We had a lot of fun. We learned some things, and we plan to implement our lessons learned from last year, this year, and bring you along with us. So thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you next week. Same time, same place. Bye.